To accomplish this, the Fashion Service Network reaches beyond traditional resources and provides an all-encompassing service source for the fashion industry. The group contains leaders in all professional service areas, and FSN meets regularly, exchanges information, communicates ideas, and discusses needs and opportunities. Interaction of FSN members has resulted in many business opportunities for their respective clients. FSN is truly a visionary resource that explores and implements new strategies and business practices. Before I introduce our specific panelists today, I just want to go back and flag our attendance question one more time, as I realized I forgot to start recording. So for those of you at home, the attendance question is, what is your personal brand? How do you want future employers to view you? And there was just a question from a student about the final exam. It's going to be live after class this evening for a week, due next week at 6 p.m. And it will be on Blackboard and all submitted through Blackboard. Well, with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. As I just mentioned before, to the panelists who are joining us for the first time this semester, this is our first time doing multiple speakers in the remote setting, so I'm hoping that this can go as smoothly as possible. But you know, really appreciate you guys being here and kind of being our guinea pigs in this sense. We have with us today Tom Nasmyth, who is the president of Informa Markets, who I will let you panelists talk a little bit more about what they do. But as a brief overview, his company runs very large retail fashion markets. Match being one of them, and some others that you all may recognize. Lynette H. Brubaker is joining us as well. She's the founder and CEO of LHB Group, who does consulting for fashion firms. Andrew Jackson, who's co-founder and managing director of Jackson Consulting Group, also does management consulting for large fashion companies as well. We also have David Votano joining us, who's Vice President of Executive Search for Luxury Fashion Marketing and Interactive at Janu Packard Global. And last but not least, Michael Stanley is joining us. He's Managing Director at Rosenthal & Rosenthal, which is a fostering firm that lends money and helps out small fashion firms, small to large fashion firms, depending. And all of you can obviously tell a much better story than me, but I'll jump off with that and turn it over. If Andy is and everything's okay, if you want to kick off with moderating and leading from here, that'd be great.
Good afternoon, everybody. My colleagues and friends at Fashion Service Network are happy to stand before you. Oh, sorry, we're not standing before you. We're posing in front of you. For what's become a tradition over the last 10 years of faces and places, and the fact is how to become your own brand. We all have come out of the fashion industry and serviced the fashion industry as individuals, and as Caroline mentioned, as a group, Fashion Service Network meets pretty often to talk about opportunities. Today, we're going to present some thoughts to you all of how to look for opportunities, how to create the opportunities, what you all need to do to become part of the fashion system. You know, what's really important is that all of my co-panelists here started as kids in the business. Now we are not so much kids, but experienced professionals. And part of that is by taking chances and having opportunities. What's very important to take note before we start talking individually is that fashion is about change. And the most important thing is to know how to deal with change. And we're in the midst of the COVID crisis, which is something of a disruption we've never seen. Fashion can, you know, the digital space works every day. People are online looking at things, looking at what to eat, where to shop, how to shop, anywhere in the world. All of you are going to be part of the future and part of the change leadership where it's going. You know, it's only a time ago that none of us on a panel ever heard of sustainability. We never heard about the green movement because it didn't exist. And really, not that long ago, the digital space really didn't exist. So the members of the panel here would like to talk to you a little bit about what you need to do. But more importantly, please ask us any questions you'd like. So let me turn it over to Lynette Brubaker. Lynette, give a little background of how you got to what you do.
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. Really great to talk to all of you on this new platform, too. And I think that's really kind of the world we're living in, which is a whole new one, isn't it? Just to answer Andy's question and tell you a little bit about my background, I've been in the fashion, beauty, accessory space really my whole career, but have done a lot of different things in it. The first half of my career, I was in media. I was a journalist, actually. I covered fashion for Women's Wear Daily. That was my first job out of school. And I covered sportswear, I covered hair, I covered a lot of very vertical, narrow topics at a trade magazine, and albeit, you know, in our industry, the most powerful trade magazine. So, and it was the only place I wanted to work when I got out of college. I went to school, by the way, in New York City. I went to Fordham, and I was a journalism and English major. And Women's Wear Daily was where I wanted to work because in my mind, it was the New York Times of fashion. And I really wanted to understand not just fashion from a design standpoint, as much as I loved that, but fashion from a business standpoint. And, you know, to me, that was the intersection of it. So I started my career there and worked on the journalism as a reporter for 5 years, but then pivoted because I actually realized that I thought that I might want to go into marketing and sales, which was kind of like church and state. It didn't happen usually, but at a place like Women's Wear, it was actually a little easier to do because it was a smaller publication. And I went to W magazine and became their marketing director. And what I basically did was support the salespeople, the people that sold ads. And it opened up a whole new world for me, and frankly, a world that I didn't know really existed as a student. I mean, I certainly knew, and we all know, there were advertisements in the magazine, but you didn't know there was a whole team of people behind those salespeople really helping to support them. And it really kind of changed the course of my career. I stayed in media, but really stayed on the sales and marketing side for almost a decade later. And I moved to different publications. I worked at Self Magazine for years as their creative and marketing director, and then went back to Women's Wear Daily, and then eventually became the publisher of InStyle. And I was there for 9 years as their publisher, and which was amazing, right? You know, that was kind of the intersection, and it was right when digital was launching. So it was very much at the cusp of when print magazines were still relevant, but digital was really what we needed to learn, you know, as people who grew up as print people, which none of you are actually. You are all digital natives, lucky you. The rest of us on this group actually had to learn that part of it. And at InStyle, managing a sales team internationally of 170 people, you can probably understand that some people could make that change and some people couldn't. And I think to Andy's point and to the beginning of what he said, our business is all about change and your ability to move, right? And your ability to kind of pivot into different areas and bring it together. So anyway, that was the first part of my career. When I left InStyle in 2010, excuse me, I wanted to go to the brand side and really work at a brand. And I worked for a company called Stella & Dot, which is a jewelry company, but it's got a very interesting digital retail platform. It's social selling. It's kind of modern Avon. And I was their chief brand officer. So I ran all of the communications facing consumers, but then also did all of the communications that was really talking to their stylists, which was basically their sales team. And there were 35,000 of them around the country. And I loved that job. And I took the job because specifically, I wanted to learn e-commerce. It really is a business that is disguised as a jewelry and accessory brand, but it was really a technology company. So really to learn technology, and and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but as you're navigating your career, sometimes you make choices based on what you need to learn and collect in your portfolio. And that particular move for me was very strategic, from that standpoint as well.
So the first part is Lynette's all about communication, and you'll hear a little bit more about communication as we talk. Let's talk to Tom Nastos a second. Tom runs trade shows, but like me, was a former manufacturer. Tom, you want to talk about trade shows and what's going on and how they work, where the future
Sure.
is?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Andy. And, good afternoon, everybody. I'll give you a little bit brief history about my career. One, I'm also, from New York and an FIT graduate. So I don't want to say when I graduated from FIT, but I do have a bachelor's degree from FIT. I did start out my career as a manufacturer. For over 30 years, I was on the manufacturing side of the business and successfully owned businesses. And in 2006, I became an investor in an event business and have since been running that event business. Andy referred to them as trade shows. The company is Informa Markets. We're the largest event producer in the world. We actually have events in over 100 countries. In fashion, we are event producers. You may have heard, whether it's Coterie in New York, which is during New York Fashion Week, or you may have heard of events such as Project or Magic, or in the past, FN Platform for footwear. Our value proposition is we bring buyers and brands together. We have over 18,000 brands in our portfolio and over 300,000 retailers that attend our shows during the course of the year. Obviously, gatherings now are not exactly happening this year, but we find it that but we are around the country, and we in the second half of the year will be opening up our events in China coming in the third quarter.
David Waitano is a senior manager of Parker Janot Parker, a executive recruiting firm. David, you want to talk a little bit about how you got to do what you do?
Sure. Thank you, Andy, and great to be here with everybody. And gotta say, I've been thinking about you and all other students going through this challenging time, and it's going to be a difficult start. But I think you all should know that as we get through this, there's going to be a lot of excitement as we get past this dip. Now, there's going to be a steep curve going back up that we experienced in our careers in the past. So it's about managing what you can right now, getting yourself into the workforce, and then being ready for when the exciting times come. So I've been thinking about it, feel for you. And Andy, to talk a little bit about my background. So as I got out of school, I was in the retail side of things for about 10 years, worked with Brooks Brothers in the early days, first in sales, and moved my way into management, and then migrated. My passion's always been the luxury sector, and so I migrated to Neiman Marcus and spent about 5 years there before realizing that there was something else out there for me in the world of fashion and career. I was living in Miami at the time, wanted to get up to New York, and came up here and got entered into the recruitment or search industry. And so this was back in 2008. So understanding starting a new job during an economic downturn. I started my job in August in a legal staffing firm, and September 2008 happened and everything crashed. And so business that we had was gone, and I had to manufacture some business for myself, and all I really knew and before that and really loved was fashion. So I started reaching out to everybody I knew in the fashion world, and luckily enough, I found someone who was willing to give me a shot. as they were coming out of this. And so I started recruiting for the fashion world while working for a legal staffing firm. And it just shows that if you want it and you have a value proposition to offer to a client, there's opportunity out there. And so I started doing legal and fashion for about a year and a half, and ended up migrating to or getting recruited to a fashion recruiting firm, which I did that JBC Style. Some of you may know about. It was on the growth again. We were growing quite rapidly. So we were a 40-person business. I was focusing on luxury retail recruitment, speaking with folks that were coming out of school all the way to very experienced managers and professionals, also on the corporate side of things, and did that for about 5 years before I was recruited to open up a luxury staffing firm based out of London called Elite Associates, and opened up their New York office, built New York. And 3 years ago, I was recruited back to Janu Pachter, where I am now, to lead more of an executive search practice, built out luxury, working a lot of the interactive, so digital side, digital marketing, and those sort of functions within fashion and the luxury world. We're part of a larger holding group called JBC Holdings, which does have JBC Style, JBC Connect, which focuses on digital creative. We do pop-ups for some of our clients, so JBC Pop, and then we have a newer division called JBC Reach, which is staffing freelance and other professionals within the industry. So it's been a great ride. I've experienced some of what you're about to go through, as we all have, and there's opportunity there for everyone. So I look forward to sharing some of the insight that I think can help as you're managing it.
As if by victory, we're going to bring all this back full circle and to talk about You Are the Brand. But first, my distinguished friend and colleague, Michael Stanley from Rosenthal & Rosenthal. And the connector is every fashion company needs a source of capital, and Michael is one of the leaders in our industry, and also a member of the FIT board. Michael?
Andy, thank you for that very handsome introduction. And I'm a little embarrassed to say my background is not as storied, of course, as you or Lynette or David's or even Tom's. I've had the same boring job since I graduated undergraduate college. And it's not quite as boring today, but what we do is we provide financial support, factoring, asset-based lending, and supply chain financing to a whole host of companies. We've been around a long time. Rosenthal, we've been around almost 80 years now. And we've had a lot of showcase clients, past clients could include Halston, Diane von Furstenberg, or Stephen Madden, on and on. And it keeps us busy. And we're very active today. We're going through this crisis, as we all are, together, and the only words of wisdom I could really state is that we will come out of it. It is temporary. It's totally different than what we experienced in 9/11 and the downturn in 2008.
So let me give you a little bit about my background. Carolyn said I'm a consultant. I'm still not sure what a consultant does, other than telling people what to do when they pay for it. My career began in sales in what was the Garment Center. And when I heard the word Garment Center, it sent shivers up my back. After going to college and being in the military for some time, I wanted something with more stability, and we determined to call it the fashion industry. Now, no one knew what I was talking about. What I figured out was I wasn't going to be a designer, and I didn't want to be a production person, but I wanted to learn all the aspects of what the business was. So I spent a lot of time sitting next to designers and merchandisers and financial people, and I learned my craft. I eventually, after a series of jobs, and it took a bunch of jobs to get to the job that made sense out of something, I became a president of a division of the Gap when the Gap owned a bunch of wholesale businesses. And by luck, I became Ralph Lauren's second licensee. That's a long time ago. Eventually, my career took me on to a company called Biedermann Industries, which was a very large company based in New York and France. We were owners of Ralph Lauren Women's Wear, Karl Lagerfeld. We were partners with Yves Saint Laurent and a number of other businesses. But most of our business start with small companies, and most of fashion really is about small companies, not big companies. And what we all have to think about is how you become part of the system. I would ask for a raise of hands, but we're never going to see it, of how many of you have worked before, how many of you have job interviews in the future, how many of you are a little bit scared because you're not sure what's happening yet. So what I think the panel should talk about a little bit is how you become a brand, and what's very important on your first job or second job is for you to stand in front of somebody and to be able to land that position or given the choice of taking that position. Caroline, do you want to talk a little bit about that to your students, or should we?
Well, I'm happy to, but I think I probably have already given them an earful up to here, and I think your opinions will be a lot more valuable at this point. But, one thing I've stressed throughout the semester, and I think actually every single speaker I've had in here so far has stressed the same thing, is how your network builds your career. You never know who you're working with that's going to get you that next jump up, and making a good impression with every person you work with, whether it's a peer or it's someone above you or it's someone below you, is what's really going to help catapult you as you go along through your career. And you never know. You never know who's got that door open for you.
Tom, you want to talk about some of the cardinal things that should be done about looking and finding a job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can relate it back to some of the things that I've done in my career. I was always very clear on the path that I wanted to take. I think that's very, very important within, fashion, whether it's in product development or in sales. And I think my fellow panelists have brought this up, that I was very specific in my career that I was on the manufacturing side. Okay, that's how I initially launched my career. And then I started to attend, whether it was different events or begin to network myself within the supply chain and within the community within the supply chain. So I was very, very focused on my specific path that I wanted to take within my career. To me, that was the main, and I always set a 3-year goal on where I wanted to do. I found that it was important that I would set a level of where I wanted to participate and how I wanted to build basically my career. I don't know if you can hear me, Andy.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me? That's great. What's very important is to have a path and set some goals for that path to get there, and to have check boxes of what to do and what not to do. And we all have gone on interviews for the job we wanted and didn't get that job, but we got another job and got to where we want to go. Lynette, you want to talk a little bit about how to get a job and what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing?
Sure. I also kind of like what you said, though, in terms of having a path. And I think that, for me, I guess my sort of North Stars, if you will, there's been 2 of them. I have always been pretty directive about going and kind of being laser focused on brands that I really believe in, because you can't fake that. You can't fake kind of going into a job interview and being knowledgeable about a brand and like being passionate, because I think that often when you talk to executives, one of the number one things they say they look for in interviews is passion, and so I've always really been very focused on, I want to go there because I really admire what this brand stands for from a value standpoint and what they do. The other thing that I think is actually almost more important than brand is following people. And I have also been very much about admiring sort of executives, leaders, people within companies and following them. Because it is, as Carolyn said, you know, and I think it's been reinforced to you many times, is the network that you build throughout your career and people that you work with, for, up and down, becomes so important. And you know, really working with people that you believe in their values and you find common structure around. I mean, almost every job I've ever gotten in my career has been with somebody that I've already worked with, for, laterally, but you know, up or above me. And you know, so really defining, you know, those people and continuing to surround yourself with them is really, really critically important. Did that answer your question, Yanzi, or?
Yeah, we did. There's no right answers or wrong answers. Michael Stanley has had the chance to deal with and meet with some of the most important companies and people in those companies. Some people have been very lucky to get someplace, and some people are very skilled. Mike, what makes differences to you when you interview people or talk to companies to become clients?
Andy, I want to answer that in two different ways. I want to go back to having a path. And I think today your path, our path, has to be very flexible, because the road ahead is frankly going to be unknown. I think that which brands will exist going forward, which brands will flourish, all the opportunities will emerge. And you know, we're talking to a young audience, and I think really the message that we should be giving them is to be excited and encouraged, because I think disruption yields opportunities, and I think there'll be many opportunities that will come out of this trauma that we're all going through. But as far as go ahead, Andy.
I think we all know there's been a great deal of disarray in the fashion system, and it continues for some time. But you know, as we said earlier, it's all about change, and there were some important pieces that we all had to get through. How to get a job, put a resume together, of knowing something about the companies that you interviewed to get a job with or be interviewed with. Mike, you see a lot of that, don't you?
I see a lot of that, and I largely see people that come to us for financing. And I think that what makes a difference with us is what they've, you know, you can only look back and what they've done in the past. Example, like what their track record has been, you know, when their skill set. And so I think if I was a graduating student, you know, out looking for a job, I would, you know, as best you can, you want to promote what you've done, you know, whether it's academically or if you had internships, and say, yeah, I could do that, or you know, or I could, or really the focus should be, yeah, I'm really motivated. I think I can add value to this brand or this company, and I think that's what you have to do. And I think it's important, because we're living in an ADD world, to make those comments and get that message across really rather rapidly during this interviewing process.
Before we turn to David, you know, one thing that's important that you all have in your hands that none of the five of us had before is living in the digital space and the ability to communicate online, to gather information quickly, but also how you're seen by others online, things that you post, things that you regret you posted, things that you would like to post in the future. But it's very important that, because you understand how to communicate in the digital space, is to be able to master what you want to say. And when you think about going in an interview, is to prepare yourself about interviewing the company that's interviewing you as well. Do some research. Do a lot of research. Find out about who works there. See if you have a friend that may know somebody there. Because it's really a good thing to be able to be ready not to just be asked questions, but to ask questions. David, you do a lot of the intermediate for companies. Talk about the resume part, because a lot of the young people who are just graduating really don't have a resume. They just have a fact statement of who they are. What should they do?
Yeah, I think building, so a few things that you're just mentioning that I think are quite important. First, building your digital profile, your digital resume, digital brand these days is just as important as your physical resume that you're going to have. So be very conscious of what is online about you. I think the first place to start is LinkedIn. You should make sure you have as much of the LinkedIn profile built out as possible. You can list, skill sets. You're in school, list the kinds of classes that you've done, any other career highlights you have, internships, but also don't forget about the amount of connections that you have out there. And it's important for you to, as you're looking at a job, to identify who works at that company and who potentially you can connect with, who maybe you have a mutual connection with. And what everyone in this audience has is, the FIT alumni is all out there. And so I think that'd be a first place to look. But then obviously your relationships and other contacts that you have out there. And then you want to look what you're posting on, everything from Facebook to Instagram, Twitter, everything like that. When I know for a fact our clients, as we send over a profile to them, first thing they do is Google that person. So you should, before you're going out for a job, Google yourself and see what the top things that come up are, because someone else is going to look at that. If there's something that you don't think is what you want others to know about, figure out a way, if you can, to get that off or get something else to replace that up there. As far as the physical resume, I think going back to what Mike was saying, you want to have your experiences jump off that page as quickly as possible. You have about 10 seconds, maybe 20, of somebody looking at your resume these days that they're going to say, okay, and then continue to read further. So your first few bullets, first few lines should grab out what you want them to know about you in reference to the job that you're looking for and the company you want to be a part of. So doing that research about the company, demonstrating the passion in any way you can, is quite important as well. And again, try to, as you're doing all these exercises, try to think, if you were the person sitting in that other chair, what would you want to see, and why would they want to speak to you, and what value can you bring back to that business?
I think in finding careers, oftentimes we don't wind up where we start. We collect information, collect experiences, and those experiences become who we are as we become successful in our careers. But it's very important to be able to look around and see product and see things and look at doors. I'm going to turn back to Tom Nastos in a moment. The event business that Tom runs, with global event business, miracles for companies. It's a platform where people can demonstrate their ideas, show their wares to a wide variety of audiences and customers, and get feedback immediately. And that's been probably one of the great cornerstones of our business. So all of you that are in this class or any classes at FIT should really be in touch with Informa through Tom to visit those shows. So, Tom?
Yeah, so, throughout my career, when I even started my company, and it was very small, it was myself and a handful of other people, when I was a brand, going to market through an event, and at that particular time it happened to have been Magic, but it could be any event, doesn't even have to be one of mine. It was an important statement physically to communicate what I was doing and why I was doing it, and creating that physical connection at that particular time, so we could really show our vision. And that type of approach has been utilized by many successful companies. For example, if I use Coterie, for example, Theory and Andrew Rosen launched Theory at Coterie. Kate Spade was literally launched at Coterie. And it was a small little space, okay? And, slowly but surely, different type of brands were launched within these marketplaces. And today we have a combination of physical and digital marketplaces, but this enables someone that has a dream that wants to bring something to life, that you have actually an opportunity to really highlight and present that dream. So it is important, that yourself, as you're building your career, you're part of that greater ecosystem. What I mentioned before, when we have 30, 40, 50,000 people of our community, okay, that are in one place, there is always an opportunity to meet, introduce yourself, understand what the opportunities are. And then the other thing is also we're a very visual community. You get an opportunity to see what's happening in the market, okay, what is the potential opportunities, and then literally discuss those opportunities with individuals there. For myself, I've always utilized these platforms to network, do business connections, connect with my bankers like Michael, okay, to kind of highlight, because when he's smiling, but it's when you work within the community, it's not only, if you have a brand, it's not just the individual, it's working with your retailers, it's working with all of your partners, okay, throughout everything from finance to logistical partners, so you could have a full view of what's going on. The other thing I wanted to mention, Andy, before we go on, is that during this process for many of the students, I was kind of thinking about when I was really kind of graduating and looking for a job, and granted it wasn't the same circumstances that we have today, but it was just reminded that I think I've been rejected more than I could even. Rejection was constantly. Everybody always would tell me no. Okay, whether it was at a job interview or trying to launch a business or a brand, no, it was always no. Okay, but one thing I could share with you, I was passionate about fashion, and I never, ever, ever accepted the word no, especially if I truly believed in it. So I think it's important in a time like this, if you feel that it's challenging, or you can't, and you could get lost in especially the beginning part of your career, whether it's the digital or the physical part of meeting with somebody. It's important that if you feel really strongly about it. I think I was rejected once in the beginning of my career 11 times, but on the 12th time I actually got the job, okay, because I was passionate about what I was doing, and finally I got to the owner of the company, and actually that was a moment that kind of changed the trajectory of my career. But I kind of stuck with it for months, okay, and I never gave up. So I think it's important, especially in times like this, that if you have the passion for it, you stick with it.
So both Lynette and Tom used the word passion, and becomes an important part of anything that's going to go on, not just in your life, but your career. And it really shows. If you don't have passion, you can go into that meeting as prepared as possible to talk about you, but people see through it right away. You can't hide passion. So you have to really go in and really be ready to feel why you're on that interview. It shows through. David, talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. I think it's super relevant, and passion, for the job you want, but for the business you want. And if you can't clearly and passionately tell somebody why you want to work for their company, why would they want to hire you? And it's interesting. In a practice I do with a number of my senior level candidates, is I ask them to give me 2 or 3 companies that they want to work for and why. And it's amazing how many of them can't do that. And I say, if you can't figure out why or which companies you want to work for, it's going to be very hard for the person on the other side to believe in you. And that's part of what you're trying to do is figure out, how can I get this person to believe in me? What can I say? How can I articulate what I'm trying to do here, what I'm trying to start? And so, yeah, I think passion is critical, and it makes you makes people want to be a part of it, want to be close to you, and that's something that that you're going to be able to offer people. So try to figure out whether it's a sector of the industry, whether it's a certain type of brand, maybe it's the size of an organization, maybe it's their mission. There's a lot of things that go into creating your beliefs in a company, and figure that out, and make sure you can give that when you're going through the interview process, or at least even deciding what type of job and what type of company you want to join.
If I can jump in too, and again, sorry about my video is really not working, but I also think you need to remember that these people that are sitting on the other side of the desk interviewing you are going to work with you on a day-to-day basis, and what you portray and how you portray yourself should make them want to work with you. You should be a very, interesting, passionate, fun person that they want to get to know more and see every day at their office, because whether or not they want to let that cloud their judgment is going to be a part of the decision-making process, who they want to surround themselves with.
Caroline, how many students in this class are business students and design students, and have they all have majors, I assume?
Yeah, the class is usually 50 students, and a lot of students have been relocated back home internationally, and a lot of them are actually from Asian countries, so they are not joining us live. We usually on a week-to-week basis remotely get around 40 people, and the majority of the students are one-year degree design students. Outside of that, it's more of an elective, so it could be from any different major throughout the campus, but the majority are design. There are a couple of merchandising students as well.
Michael, maybe you can talk a little bit about the importance of having professional relationships with accountants and lawyers and bankers, of how important that is for anybody in the fashion business.
Sure. So, in an emerging company, one of the biggest mistakes the founders have is that they don't align themselves with the professionals that really know the business, that may have done something 1,000 times, so they know where the problems lie, and they can guide you appropriately. And the professionals would include your lawyers, your accounting firms, and/or a consultant. And many times they help you with our side of the business, with as far as getting the proper financing, getting the right structure, getting the right pricing. And then what we're going through now, when we're going through this rough weather, how to navigate, how to get, governmental assistance and so forth, how to deal with your employees, how to deal with the fact, the people that you owe money to, your supply chain. So that's very essential, because really what the goal is now, we're all in this survival mode. And how do we, as businesses, how do we survive this treacherous event that's been, set upon us? And I think it's the most crucial thing to have the right people advising you, and also reaching out to others. And there's a community of business owners that share information. And one of the things, we all know, as a group of the fashion services, how we collectively share information between and among ourselves. And it's crucial, whether it's logistic information, whether it's trade show, marketing info, customs and duty data that, you have to be so cautious of now. And it's also disrupted the marketplace, going back a year, and then of course this virus set upon us. So yes, those professionals are crucial for surviving this, Andy. It's true.
So
what's I think important, because Tom, one of the things is that when you went into business and we did lend you money, and I said yes, I didn't say no to you, Tom. And then, however, you were very nice and you repaid us. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes I come up short. Thank you, Tom.
Yes.
And Michael, thank you for mentioning consultants before too. Really
yes. Thank you, Michael.
I took my usual commission, Andy. I want a Starbucks whenever they open up again.
So, what I think is important for this class and other classes in the future is the fashion system has changed, and there's a rotation coming away from department stores. And specialty retailing and the digital space is an area that you've all grown up with. And we talked a little bit about a couple of words of community and network. Those are very important words. And what you have an advantage of as younger people and students globally is the fact that the digital space, understanding how to deal, is the key to the future. And all of you are ready to deal in that space better than most of the older companies. So there'll be new brands and new sourcing and new means of social media and new brand ambassadorships. But you will be the jockeys that ride the horse into the zone of success. Caroline, anything additional for us?
I like that. I think that's a great comment there. I have a couple of questions coming from students abroad. One of my questions is actually for Tom. It's from a student, Zhang Zhang, and she's wondering, do you think the most important thing on your road to success is knowledge accumulation or experience accumulation?
Repeat my road to success. What is important? Say it again.
Do you think the most important thing on your road to success is knowledge accumulation or experience accumulation? So,
it really, knowledge or experience accumulation. It was really first knowledge and then building a roadmap to get the experience, I think is the best way I could put it. Because, you know, coming out of FIT, I had a textile background, and I was clear that I wanted to be engaged on the supply chain side of the business, because at that time I found that it was important if I understood, you know, if it's like having a restaurant, if I understood how to cook it, I could probably sell it at some particular point, right? So the knowledge base was very important to me, to understand how it all basically worked. And once I had some comfortable, but you know, it's one of those things as far as knowledge base, I never stopped, okay? And what I mean, I never stopped for 40 years of really, you know, enhancing and building, you know, my base of what I knew, because it was a constant, you know, the great thing about fashion, it's a constant evolving business. That's the part that was always, it's international, it's a $1.2 trillion business, and it's constantly evolving. So knowledge to me was always, you know, at the top of the page. And really, this is what the group that I'm involved in, with the Fashion Service Network, we're able to share all of this information among ourselves, even though I'm on this group with so many successful professionals. So I think that really goes to the top of the list.
I think that's great, and I would add in from my own personal experience, I wish that I had heard it said to me, and it may have been said to me, but when you're first starting out, that even if you are a very, very smart person and you have gone to FIT and you know everything that you should know about fashion walking into that, you're still not going to walk in and get the CEO's job, you know, or become, you know, if you want to be a assistant buyer in a year. You're still going to have to put in that grunt work and that experience to get you to where you need to be. And there is so much value that you pick up along the way, and that you learn even in a year of being in the industry that you just can't learn while you're in school. So I think that was an interesting question from our students. I think at this time, you know, it's kind of a twofold, you know, they go hand in hand with each other. It's not one or the other.
Right.
Does any students out there have any questions? If you could raise a hand.
Hey, Caroline, I would just you know, add into that how important it is, you know, in building your brand, and that never stops. And yes, in the beginning, as you get into the workforce, building your brand is what you're doing with the resume and all the other thing, if you have a portfolio, all of that. But once you get into your job, you're building your brand from there with the people that you meet and everyone you come into contact with. And, hard work, demonstrating that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get things done, that leaves a lasting impression. And so I think, as you were saying, it's not just, what you have when you walk into a job, it's really what you do when you get there. So getting the job is just the beginning, and then you have to put in the work to become noticed.
I totally agree with that. That's a great comment. Jessica, we're going to speak first.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes. We
Hi,
see you too.
my question is, do you know what phase a brand or company should be in when it should start considering doing trade shows or participating in those events?
So what phase your company should be in? Is that the question? Before you start thinking about
what phase a new company should be in?
So what we've been seeing a great deal over the last few years is quite a few young companies started as digitally native companies and started to develop a relationship directly with their customers. And today it's very inexpensive to do that, right? You could, you get a website on Shopify. You could begin to develop your relationship. You have digital tools that you can begin to market. And many of those digital native brands are now coming to the events and promoting themselves at the events, because the great thing about brick and mortar together with retailers that also buy from online, it allows you to scale your business, right? So to me, I think we ourselves have programs. By the way, so everybody knows, and the number one thing that all retailers are asked for continuously on our survey around the world is show me new brands and new product. It's the number one thing consistently, which speaks to opportunity for somebody like yourself. We ourselves have programs to actually support new brands and new buyers that are relatively inexpensive to come into the marketplace. And then what we do is we support you with introduction, matchmaking. This is what, you may be, a particular type of brand. These are the retailers that we're going to highlight you. So my recommendation is once you have some revenue, okay, and you have a very specific, I never did anything without a plan. You have a very specific plan and a very specific target, then, okay, you could begin, because events are an investment, okay? And one thing you must always insist on with people like me is you get a return on that investment. So if you come to an event, we had some great Korean brands that came to our event, at Coterie from Seoul, Korea, okay? First event, one brand did $300,000 in business, first day. Good return on an investment, right? So to me, but we helped them. But it was a very clear plan that they had. So you got to get a little bit of revenue going.
All right, thank you.
Next I have.
There's some.
I'm sorry.
I think there's something that thread follows through everything we talk about. No matter what the target is, you need a great product. Whether that product is a digital product about footwear or jewelry or home goods or apparel, you need a great story. But you also need a great storyteller. And I think Lynette can talk about that. The storyteller piece is the penultimate piece. You still need a great product, you need a story, but you need to be able to get out in front of people so they come back and they deal with you. And that's how you get a job as well. You are the product. You're the brand. You need to be able to talk about you somehow, and you need to be able to get in front of somebody. And, that's where the network is important. Visiting Tom's trade show, walking around, if he lets you in, and looking at the booths, see what people do, talk to them. Of course, he'll let you in.
Yeah. Caroline, if I could add to that, because the point that Andy makes about, and particularly about digital storytelling as well as experiential, but again, I think one of the advantages of this group and the place that you're living in now is that you are native digital storytellers. David talked about like how important your social media is, LinkedIn. I personally, because I am looking for people who are good storytellers, both personally as well as professionally. So yes, I'm looking at people's LinkedIn, but I'm looking at their Instagram. I'm looking at YouTube. I'm looking at TikTok for them. I mean, there are all these other storytelling platforms that are so critical, and that tells me so much about your ability to be resourceful, your creativity, and your way that you put stories together. And it's no different. I mean, this topic is actually about you as the brand, right? But, storytelling about you, it's the first place I go is on social, and frankly, it's the first place I go also now for brands that I'm interested in. It's so important to be setting that right and immediate tone. And we have so much technology now to do that, in different platforms to do it in. And now storytelling is going to like 4.0, because the way we normally tell stories, like in live events right now, are a little bit on pause. So I can't tell you, and knowledge is power, right? I have spent the whole weekend on Fortnite with my son, who is 12 years old, watching Travis Scott launch his new album on Fortnite and gaming platforms. It's talk about like that knowledge versus experience question, that knowledge that you have to constantly be in front of and on top of what the platforms are that people are using. That is incredible to me, this like notion of cross mentorship. And all of the students that are on right now, again, this is what you do every day, but how are you using your everyday platforms to tell these stories, succinctly, quickly, and in a way that actually gets your point across. And the way that that's being done now is in video and in so many other ways. So I think this is the most exciting time, for storytelling, because this is really what separates the men from the boys, with brands and people.
That's great. I love that. The next student I had, unless anyone has anything to add on that question, the next student I have is Alyssa Davis.
Broke up. We didn't hear you.
Okay. Hi, can you guys see me or hear me? Okay, so my question is like, navigating the world now where we're stuck to like this digital surface, and us as graduates or students that will probably be graduating next fall, like how would you recommend we start networking in this type of situation? Especially like, I know adding people on LinkedIn and stuff like that is efficient, but I know that there's people I've added on LinkedIn that work at companies that I'm interested in, and maybe they just don't use LinkedIn as often, or they don't recognize me, which I wouldn't expect, but in a way where like it's hard for me to get through and build that network. So how would you guys suggest we would effectively network in this situation?
Do any of us can jump in?
Yeah. That's great.
I think I can understand why you'd be like, how do I kind of do this? I would, again, go back to something we've discussed before about really being clear with yourself, like, what are the companies that you're really interested in? And then who are the people that you're most interested in? And I'm going to tell another story. I have twin 15-year-old daughters, and I have a 12-year-old son, and they've been doing all kinds of homeschooling. And I feel like in this time when everyone is we're all at the same level right now. We're all working from home. We're all entering a brave new world of how do we communicate. Right now, people that maybe you wouldn't normally be able to get in touch with you can get in touch with. And I'm going to tell you a real life story. My son is like an elite soccer player. He has a little team that he plays with, and his coach has been doing virtual Zoom trainings 3 times a week. He reached out to 2 players from the Red Bulls, which is our soccer team, because he's like, this would be cool. He's 12 years old. He's like, this would be cool if these guys came on to they do a motivation call. You know, he got both of those players to come on to this call with 12-year-old soccer players. So my son inspired me to reach out to, if it's an influencer you're really inspired by, a designer that really just send them a direct message on Instagram. Like, what do you have to lose, really? You know, but I have found that people are right now very open. They have a little bit more time, maybe, to receive information. And if you are sincere about your outreach, I think it's really a wonderful time to build relationships.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and I think that what you mentioned right at the end was the sincerity about it. I think, you know, coming at it from a business perspective, you also should understand that people involved in these companies are under a lot of stress right now. So if you send a message and they don't get back to you, don't take it personally or think they don't want to speak to you or something like that. Give them some time and maybe try again, or think of another way to get through to them, whether it be another platform. And I think drive back to any of your outreach to a reason. There's also a lot of web conferences and digital conferences that are going on right now that are free. So specifically within the fashion space, try to look out for some of those, and you'll find that the speakers, are enjoying having the chance to speak. But then also, if you have a real comment, a real reason to follow up with them, mentioning that you saw them there, or you heard, or there was something they said that landed with you, and reaching out because of that is a good idea. So I think continuing the efforts to identify who it is that you want to speak to, with the why behind it, and then try to find them on different platforms, and looking for any events that digital events that are out there. We are all going through this together. We do have perhaps some more time at certain periods. Then be confident that you can reach out to them. If you don't hear back, don't take it personally. Try again. Give them a few weeks or month, whatever the time is, and try again.
And be brazen enough to send a letter, which most people still get, and say, I can help make changes in your company. Maybe they're small changes by helping people understand how to use the digital space. Maybe you can just say, I'm interested in design, but I can help you communicate to people that look like me. That's what people are looking for. And I think that's what Tom said earlier. Everybody is looking for a change agent, a new brand, a new idea, a new personality, somebody to help get them in front of a new audience. Everybody's in an equal space. Lynette said that. Every company has to rethink how to retool, how to remove.
That's great. Does anyone have anything to add?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Philip, I have you as the next hand up.
So,
Hello?
Hi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I have a question for students such as myself who have tons of design ideas but don't really have any idea where to start on the business end. So I was thinking to ask, what are some resources or ideas to start considering for students who want to learn more about that and develop a plan and start generating revenue based off their work?
I don't know if everybody went. I'll jump in first.
Great.
So you had mentioned that you have design ideas, but you really want to jump in and really kind of pursue more of a commercial side. Is that the question?
Yeah, I have designs. I make them. I draw them. We all do as design students, but nobody really talks to us about how to start building a brand outside of maybe just doing things on a grassroots level, but more grow it into a commercial sense. Yeah. How do you make that leap?
So for me, and I launched the business. It was very, very small at the beginning. a few years after I graduated from FIT, I was very specific to say, okay, what audience do I want to reach? Who's the end consumer that I really wanted to reach? And I started from that point, and I started to do research on saying, okay, my consumer is, male or female, this age group, they like streetwear, whatever the product may be. And then I started within my analysis to say, well, who's already in the marketplace? Do I want to be a jeans company? And from understanding from a consumer point of view, and one of the things also, it's not only currently what consumers are buying, but early on I learned, and frankly, I learned from really some strong professionals, is beginning to forecast where is this market going, right? And look, kind of around the corner a little bit from a fashion perspective. It's not necessarily where you are today, but use your design skills, okay, to effectively tell me what's going to happen in spring of 2021, fall 2021. And I would really start at that particular point, and then that begins to narrow, okay, specifically your target audience. Many times I find that people design for themselves, which is fine, okay, and there are some great designers that could do that and say, listen, I just do this because I'm passionate about it, and this is what I do, and they bring the market to them. But that's far in between. That's like a Rick Owens type of person that says, listen, this is what I've done, and this is what I do, as opposed to targeting a very specific audience and then designing for that particular audience. It's a different path. But first, I would really kind of look at specifically, the audience that you want to design for and what you're passionate about. It's got to work for you too.
Yeah.
So it's the part getting your foot in the door for a company that you think you can help make a difference to, or having the stamina to try to do something on your own in a very, very small way and test your concept. It's an expensive way to do it, but it can be done. You can bring an idea to a local retailer and start it that way, but have the ability to get it produced on time and priced right. It's a very difficult way of doing it, but it's a way of starting. People have done that. There's two different ways: looking for a job, picking a company where you think you can make a difference to them and would be a ground, a place where you can start, or having the courage to try something on your own in a very small way while you're doing that.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I love this question because I think it's important to realize that as students, you have a lot of freedom to be designing within the scope of an assignment, but it's a lot more artistic and thoughtful in that sense. But once you're out there in the real world, you have to be designing with the end customer in mind, no matter who that end customer is. Because even if you're just doing it for your own company, you're only trying to sell 5 pieces. I mean, if you can't sell one of those pieces, you're still up a creek. So it's really super important to always have that customer first and foremost in your mind, whoever that customer may be, while you put this idea into place. And it's naive to think that someone's just going to buy something because they think it's art. You have to be able to wear it and understand it, and want to have it out in public. Unless anyone has anything further to add, I'll call the next student. Is Nizan.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I did a little research. I went to the your website, and then I saw that something about I have 2 questions. I saw that something's about FSM upper school scholarship to FIT. I wonder if every student at FIT have the equal opportunity to win that scholarship, or is it just for American students, not international students?
It's for every student. But it has to be a student at FIT, a full-time student at FIT.
Yes, of course. So.
And there are no barriers. Just check with the check with your deans in charge of the scholarships.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, I wanted to know that what is the scale of the companies that you are cooperating with now? Like, do you prefer start-up companies, or you would like to cooperate with the companies that already have a bit more better organized?
Is that for someone specifically? Maybe Michael might be a good one to jump in on that.
Yeah, I listen, we look at all kinds. I mean, collectively, our clients could be public companies down to, emerging companies. So, part of the group, we have professionals who are not on the call. It could be the accounting firm that has an array of clients. We have 500 clients, and some of them are emerging, and some of them are large, well-established, multi-year companies. So it's all over the gamut. It's a very much of a wide range of industries, and I can only speak for ourselves. We have companies in home furnishings, in footwear and jewelry, fashion, but it's largely all consumer products. And that's what really we do, and then we have an affinity for this, so it really depends upon who the member is.
Okay.
But in general, we don't deal with startups. In general, it's companies that are beyond the startup, and they're emerging businesses. If you have a compelling idea that you think would be interesting for someone to look at, send it to Fashion Service Network, and we'll look at it and maybe send it on to somebody. But each of the companies and members of Fashion Service Network are independent companies. And it happens to be we work together where we can, referring business back and forth, but acting as a sounding board for each other. No one in fashion has enough answers or all the answers. So we all try to deal with each other to get smarter.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I wonder, is it possible, maybe you can share like a case, so we can know a bit more detail?
A case, or what can you elaborate?
Like maybe like an example.
Of what?
Let me give you a example, if I could, Andy, because I'm going to have to beg off. I have a call with the lawyers at 5:30. But for example, we financed a company. We've been financing Rebecca Minkoff for the past, I don't know, call it 8 years. And how did she start? She started originally working as a designer for another accessories company, and then she really learned her skill set. I think she went to her folks to borrow the starting capital. She came to us. She told us her story. It was a very intriguing story, and what she did, actually, she spoke at a graduation, an FIT graduation. I think it was about 2 years ago, something like that. And she tells the story that she wanted to go to a prom, and she went to her folks, and she said, "I want to buy this fantastic dress." And it was very expensive, and her folks said, instead of buying the dress, buy a sewing machine. So she learns how to sew, and then from that she learned how to make pocketbooks and bags and the like, and it's a fantastic story. So that's just like a little story that one of the companies that we have been involved in.
We also have a mentor.
I have to leave and enjoy.
Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
If we have time for just one more question,
I can tell personally,
panelists, that would be great. Oh.
Yep.
Did you have something to add? Sorry, Andy. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
Ariana, I think maybe will be our last question.
So, Carol, I
One
think if
second.
most of us had other plans, we're breaking.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, do you, are you guys able to stay for one more question? Or is anyone able
Yeah, go ahead.
to? Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry, and like, gotta get this question in. But so my original question was basically, were there any specific new brands that you think we should be keeping up with? But you were also talking about like content creators and things like that. So I was wondering if you had any like specific individuals in mind that are kind of putting out interesting content, or any brands that kind of like shape their advertisement just like a little bit differently than kind of like what's out there. If you could think of any like off the top of your head, basically.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. You know, again, I always start with brands personally that I'm passionate about. And if you look at the brands that you really love, okay, I am really into beauty and wellness. Okay. That's like my obsession. I'm also really into food. Right. So I look in those categories of like, who are the people that are really being so innovative? One of the brands, I mean, in full disclosure, I represent them, but it's a wellness brand that Bobby Brown started called Evolution 18. They are doing a really, really good job in communicating during this time period, right tone, reaching out to people, you know, targeting them about like, what are some of the things that you can be doing at home using our wellness products and ingestibles, simple recipes, healthy smoothies, like putting, you know, those things together, you know. So again, follow your passions and look at who's doing it very, very well. Rebecca Minkoff with Mike was talking about. She's doing a great job, and it's Rebecca herself too. You know, I think that founders who actually put themselves out there in a very authentic way and who strike the right tone are really interesting to watch. Another one in the accessory space is Eugenia Kim. Adorable, putting herself out there, doing a great job in relating to people. Now, not everybody had done well with that. I mean, you've heard the other side of that with influencers and celebrities who are missing the tone of what's going on in the world right now, right? So they're interesting to look at too, right? I would say the best barometer for you of who's doing a good job is who are you responding to, or who makes you feel like, ooh, that's icky, like that doesn't feel right, you know, in terms of what's going on. You know, so I really watch those types of brands, and particularly founders, because it says something about their leadership. It says something about their personal ability to connect with audiences. And I think also right now you're learning things about people who are sort of founders and designers that you never knew about. Like, I love seeing, like, you know, another designer, that accessory designer that I love, like, I never knew she was a huge music fan. So one of the things that she's doing, she designs jewelry, but is she's posting a playlist every week. Great. All right. So I know something even more about her, that I know her musical taste. I already know she's a fabulous jewelry designer, right? But I didn't know she has exquisite musical taste, and she's also an astrologer. Like, she's been talking about astrology. I mean, I'm just giving you an example of just like some of these fun people to kind of find, but there's so many good ones that, again, I would say, what are some of the brands that you love, and kind of dig in, you know, and see. I'm a food obsessed person. I follow Cherry Bomb. It's so good. I would highly recommend it. Follow it on Instagram. It's pure food porn. It's so good.
I think there are two zones which have grown dramatically. One is home. Look at a company called Parachute. It's been a client of mine for the last 8 years. They live in the digital space, now the retail brick and mortar space. Their business remains to be focused on home, kids, soft home, and a little bit of hard home. Watch a brand which I think has been incredible called Love Shack Fancy. We helped kick it off. They were fortunate enough to be able to afford some mistakes in the beginning, opened up stores, and now have their own stores. I think what Lynette said, what brands do you like? I would look at younger, newer brands which have come about in the last 2 years, which are probably more relevant to where the retailers want. Retailers know about brands that have been around for 10 years. As Tom said earlier, they're looking for the next new idea, the next new personality, the next new blogging opportunity. Anything that'll attract a customer that's new and willing to take an experiment. You know, that's really what you need to do, is follow new people.
I feel like I appreciate the like almost like the sentiment that being like upfront is kind of attracting people, and being able to be like really honest, and like especially like founders and things like that, like using themselves to like market their own company. I'm really into like content creation, whether it's like, especially when you said like the Travis Scott concert, like everyone thought that was like great. But I like I'm really like into like graphic design and things like that, and kind of doing like video and things like that. So like specific things like that, I think that really helps. And yeah. So I appreciate everything.
I mean, I hope this helps. And now we spoke about having a plan, and Tom spoke about the plan, and so did Lynette, and so did David. There's a great book that everyone should read. It's not a very long book. It's written by a friend of mine named Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. The book is called Start With Why. It's very important to understand where you want to go and why. Why does this product make sense? Why will somebody buy it? And so on down the line. It's an interesting little book.
Okay. I will definitely look into that. Thank you so much. All right, bye guys.
Thanks. I have had one more student raise their hand, but I don't know if you guys need to jump off, and I don't want to keep you too much longer.
And I've got to get off also, so.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. This was wonderful. We appreciate you guys so much, and hope everyone stays happy and healthy in the next coming weeks.
Thank you.
Hope that you are healthy soon.
Best of luck, everybody.
Good luck.
Good luck, everybody. Thank you.
Good luck with your careers. Thank you.
Students, if you could just stand for a moment. Reiterate for those of you, because I know there are a couple of questions bouncing around, that the final is going to be due in a week. I will post it this evening so you can get started on it right away. If you have any issues, please be sure to let me know right away so that I can help you out with it. Grading will be tight, so we'll have a very quick turnaround. Once I'm completely finished grading, I will drop you guys a note so that you can let me know if you have any questions. But everything other than the final should be graded in the next day or two. So if you want to take a peek and let me know if you have any questions, that would be great. Are there any other questions lingering out there?
Hi, did you say that we have 2 attempts for the final?
There are 2 attempts in there just to help you guys troubleshoot. You shouldn't really do them unless you just make a mistake and accidentally submit. So
Like me last time? Yeah, okay.
Yes, and so if that happens, please do still shoot me a note, because I am going to try to do grading before next Monday so that I can get you guys your grades back really fast.
Okay.
So yeah, keep me informed if that happens.
I will. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. Anyone else? Okay, so you guys, it has been a great honor working with you guys all this semester, and I'm sorry that the semester didn't go how any of us had planned. I have been super impressed with your resilience and your ability to get up and going remotely. I wish you all a lot of luck. I hope you enjoy taking the final. It's not a daunting final as some may be, but please stay in touch. Let me know if there's anything I can be doing to help you guys on your career path. I'm excited for you all. I think you all have a lot of great ideas. I've loved getting to know you via email and a little bit in person as we started off the semester. And I wish you all great luck. And a side note, if anyone is looking for housing this summer because you have an internship, I happen to have a lead on something in the West Village, so you can feel free to shoot me an email about that as well. Happy to connect you guys. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Stay well. See you when I see ya.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.